Hi, I'm Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Tampa Bay. The election is over. It's a time of healing. It's a time of looking forward. And one of the people in our state legislature that I'm most excited about is Rich Glorioso. Rich, good to have you back on the program.
Well, thanks, Bill. It's great to be back here again.
You know, 4 months ago, I tried to look for this program. I wanted somebody who would come in and give us a straight shot on where the Republican Party was going. And I asked your staff to book me in, and you're good to be here, and I appreciate it. What do you see for things going on?
Well, it's been a great election. I mean, it was a tough election for the Republicans nationally. But, you know, statewide, we did pretty well. We didn't lose. In the Florida House of Representatives, we had 77 members in the Republican Party going in. We come out with 76, but one of the seat that we lost had been a Democrat in that seat for 4 terms, and after he got elected the last time, he changed over to Republican for his last 2 years. And so it would be very difficult for us to win that seat anyway.
Right.
So we feel very comfortable in the Florida House. We've got 76 members coming back. We're going to be strong. The people, the voters, even though nationally they went for Barack Obama, they didn't say the Republican Conservative Party is dead in Florida. I think they said it's still alive. We like the conservative effort. Nationally, I think they said they were tired of President Bush and some of his issues and the mistakes that he made. I think we've all agreed that there was mistakes made in his term. And so it's time for a change. And Barack Obama ran a wonderful campaign.
Oh, that was a juggernaut. I mean, if he runs the government the way that campaign went, we're in for some good times.
Absolutely. It was one of the best campaigns I've seen run. Everything from even think about, we're going to announce our vice presidential candidate. Text us with your phone number, and we'll text you right away. Or email us with your email address, and we'll email you right away when it goes out. Now they have all that data to contact the voters and say, by the way, it's voting time. Have you voted yet? Do you need transportation? You have access now to the voters. It was a brilliant move. We in the Republican Party have not done that.
Well, you know, in effect, though, and one of Obama's stated heroes was a Republican, Ronald Reagan, who, by the way, was a Democrat for a lot of years before he became a Republican.
Right.
And Reagan circumvented Congress several times, even though it's his own Congress, by going directly to the people and saying, you call these congressmen and senators up and get them to do what they need to do right. And Obama has that great opportunity. You know, they talk about Pelosi and Reid shoving him around, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's got the ability to shove them around.
Well, I think you're right. I think he has such a popular move. And you really, when you look at the election outcome, 52% of the people in this country said they wanted Barack Obama to lead our country for the next 4 years. 48% people said no. But now it's time for all 48% to say, we support you, Obama. We want to see what you're going to do. We like our capitalistic society. We know you're not going to probably wipe it out. He's not going to do that, although some of the things he's talked about are moving a little bit to the socialist side. However, the Republicans have done that recently with the bailout we talked about earlier.
We just nationalized 9 banks with a Republican president.
That's right.
I mean, you want to talk about socialism? You know, it's a matter of who the socialism is for. Is it going to be for the CEO of Lehman Brothers, who just took, out of the last 8 years, took $411 million out of Lehman Brothers to bankrupt the company? Or is it going to be Joe, and I'm not Joe the tax accountant. If I hear the other term, Joe one more time, I'm going to scream.
Yeah, the thing that I worry about when we talk about Joe the plumber, I guess I'll say it for you and get you screaming. The concern I have is I don't want us to lose the spirit of forming your own company and becoming successful and having a cap of $250,000 or $350,000. It's all you can make, so that you don't want to grow larger than that. And that scared me a little bit. I don't think it's going to happen.
But we're only talking about a 3% increase on those people. We weren't talking about doubling the taxes they paid. It was from 36 to 39%, and the loopholes on most small business takes that down into the 10, 11, 12% range.
You're right, and that's what we're talking about right now.
And that was part of the scare tactic, and we were talking about income. We weren't talking about money you're spending on your company to
Right.
build your company, because all that's part of the loopholes. You get to deduct it.
The only caveat I'll add to that is when you look at all the things that Obama has promised, there's no way a 3% increase in those taxes can pay for it.
You're absolutely right.
And that's the part that bothers me.
We have to grow the economy.
We've got to get the economy growing, and the only people that grow the economy are small businesses. Large businesses do not grow the economy. It's the individual who goes out and becomes a electrician and works for 5 or 10 years as an electrician and says, well, you know, things are good. I'm going to try to start my own company. You know, and 5 years later, he's got 5 people working for him. That's how you grow your economy.
And I agree. And a 3% tax increase, I don't see how that's going to cause them not to, you know, if I could make between 250,000 and I could make 500,000. And I would in order to make that, I'm going to pay 3% more of taxes. I'd take 3%. Would you, if you knew you're going to have to pay 3% more, would you take the additional 250,000 in your pocket?
Of course you would.
Sure.
Only, but you got to caveat it if it's that 3%, not more.
Well,
again,
that's
where we got our concerns.
That's all he said.
Right.
And you know, the thing I think is important, and the thing you and I talked about, you're a fiscal conservative. You believe in paying for what you get.
Absolutely.
And I've been a Republican, I'll say it on the air, I've been a Republican all my life. But the party left me because I'm a fiscal conservative. And I always didn't like the tax and spend Democratic philosophy. But I also don't like the spend and charge Republican philosophy.
No doubt about it.
My grandchildren are going to pay for the crap that's gone on in the last 8 years.
Our legislators in Washington, the Republicans, became exactly what you're talking about. They did not balance the budget. The revenues in the last 7 or 8 years have gone up like this. The trouble is the spending went up like that. And that's what they did. You know, in the state, we had the same issues the last couple of years. And instead of raising taxes, instead of wiping out our savings, we said we're going to balance the budget. And we worked very hard this last year. Our budget 2 years ago was $73 billion, and we had $73 billion to pay for it. This past year, our budget was $66 billion. We balanced the budget at $66 billion. And when we did the cuts, one of the things we said statewide, and I was very proud to be a Republican and be in the House this past year, we said, again, we're not going to raise taxes. We're not going to spend our savings, our emergency money. You wouldn't do that at home. We're going to balance the budget exactly how you do it at home if you were having these problems. And then we said we're going to put people first, which is what you would do at home. We said education, medical, safety, security goes first, and things are going to be donors. I thought that was a great philosophy until I realized that I'm chairman of the infrastructure committee dealing with things. And I knew at that point I was going to be a donor. The trouble was how much we were going to have to donate. And we took about $500 million out of the transportation arena and moved it to those issues. But now a kid can get preschool. Now a kid can get kid care. You can't deny those issues. Those are people issues that had to go first.
People like you and the philosophies you have, and we've, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked off the air a lot, and we can't even go over all the things. But it's the kinds of things that you believe in, think in, that are going to rebuild the Republican Party to be a viable force.
Well, thank you. I think that there's a whole bunch out there like me right now that want to take us in a little different direction. I think we're going to be all right. I think the conservative movement, like I said, statewide, we did well, which means the people like what we've done statewide. They did not like what we did nationally.
Well, I like what Charlie Crist did, and he bucked the national party in opening up voting so more people could vote. And there's a lot of real hardcore conservatives that said that'll kill him from now on. He's dead to us.
Yeah, you've got to allow the people to vote. I mean, that's our country.
Yeah.
I was hoping we'd see 80 or 85% of the people turn out. As it turned out, we had less people turn out than we did 4 years ago, which was a shame, a real shame. This was a tough election.
Somebody must have stayed home because a whole lot of new voters showed up.
A lot of people must have stayed home, and that's a shame. I like everybody voting. I think, you know, we're in the greatest country in the world.
Oh, without a doubt.
We have a right to elect someone to represent us in a very orderly fashion, and they can come from any background, any race, and run. Get out and support them.
You know, I was really impressed with John McCain's concession speech and with Obama's acceptance speech, because both of them were conciliatory, but we watched the greatest nation, the most powerful nation in the world, change power peacefully and without rancor. And yet there's still going to be people wandering around that are, oh.
There are, on both sides.
Yeah.
But that's something this country's done over and over again. And that's something we should never, ever lose. And that's something I would hope our kids are paying attention to, especially our teenagers right now, paying attention to how easily we can change from one president to the other with two completely opposite philosophies, two different parties, and they will have different paths they will travel. Bush traveled one path, Obama's going to travel another. And then in 8 years or 4 years, it may change again.
Well, it'd be fun in 8 years or 4 years for you and I to sit here and go over it again.
I'll have lost a lot more hair by then.
Well, I'm starting to get a little thinner myself. But that's the wonder of it. That's really the wonder of it. And we're going to go back when your legislature convenes, and we're not going to have as much money then as we had going into the last legislature.
You're right, and we're already, the leadership's already talking. We're going to keep the same philosophy going into the budget. We're going to try to cut and balance the budget. Taxes will be the absolutely last resort. Raising taxes, that's really not the answer. There's still a lot of waste in Tallahassee. You know, government very rarely goes through a downturn. So when times are good, you know, government just keeps growing and growing and growing, and there's no reason to get efficient, because you never have those downturns like businesses do or like people do in their own homes, where the revenues are going up and down, where you have to look at, say, why am I doing this? I had a businessman friend of mine tell me recently that you know, things are getting tough, and there was a conference coming up, and he realized they were going to send 5 people to this conference. And he says, what's going on? In 95, we sent 1.
Yeah.
Well, then as they started discussing, he said, well, things got good, business was good, we started sending more people to this conference. He says, 1, let's get back. Government's got to do the same thing. We've got to look at all the different ways that we have kind of gotten fat, where we've gotten inefficient, and straighten them out. Tallahassee, we're working on that very hard.
I need to get the lobbyists out of there.
Yes and no. Some of it is the bureaucracy, not even the lobbyists. Some of it's just plain bureaucracy. We've done it this way for 100 years. Why should we change now? And you know, I was in the military for 27 years. I know bureaucracy when I say it. And I really fought it in the military. And you can do it. You can become efficient. You have to look at your processes. I'm a big process improvement person. I spent a lot of time with the Deming system of constant improvement. And you know, when you have a problem, if you look at how your process is done, you're going to find that somewhere in there is where the problem was. It's not your people. Your people are always good. 99% of every person comes to work and says, I'm going to do a great job today. And if they're not doing an outstanding job, then you better look at what the process is, because the process may be hindering them from excelling.
But you know, and that's true. We're too quick to not solve the problem, but look for a scapegoat or somebody to blame.
Right. We treat a lot of symptoms in government and not really solve the problems. And that's what we need to do. We need to spend more time really analyzing what the problem is, and rather than treating symptoms, and then try to get to the root problem and fix it up. I will tell you, one of our biggest challenges in the state is going to be medical. You know, I was talking about that $66 billion budget that we passed this past year. Out of that budget, $23.6 billion is medical. Another $21 billion was education. There's 2/3 of your budget taken up by 2 issues.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I had a friend say about this last election, oh my God, they're going to socialize medicine. Well, I get my care through Medicare and the VA. You got your care for the majority of your lifetime, or a good share of your lifetime, through the United States Air Force, which is a socialized system for all practical purposes of medical care. We're already paying for the costs of people going to emergency rooms who do not have insurance. So the rich have policies, the poor have a net that they can get taken care of. The middle class guy out here in the middle, he's paying for both ends. Plus, if he goes to the doctor and he doesn't have medical care of any kind, he'll lose his home.
That's right. And that's a big issue. It's really the middle class that has the hardest problem with medical. As you say, the rich are taken care of and the poor are taken care of. The guy in the middle, he's the one that has to pay a lot of money for it.
Before I went, by the way, before I went on Medicare, my wife and I, we were paying $1,500 a month for our insurance. And we wouldn't have been able to get it except for I own a company, and I was able to pump it through there.
Right.
So the idea that people can have great medical care without having to pay for it is not a good idea. And we're going to pay for it no matter whether or not we quote unquote socialize it or come up with a national insurance policy.
Yeah, it's going to be a big challenge. We ran a couple of pilot programs in the state for Medicaid, and now we're seeing that we're having some problems with them on the pilot programs. It's going to be a big challenge. Unfortunately, I don't sit on any of those committees, so I'm not in the know on all of it. One of the things you find out when you get elected to the Florida House of Representatives or any or the Florida Senate, and I'm sure it's the same nationally, is there's so many issues you're dealing with every day that you only have ability to become kind of an expert in a couple of them. And I've focused, of course, on transportation, which was my background. And as we talked earlier, I've been focusing on foster kids and domestic violence. And so
let's go into that just very quickly, because I know that's something you're very deeply involved in, especially locally.
That's right. I'm on the board of directors for the Family Justice Center here in Tampa, which is a one-stop facility for victims of domestic violence. When you walk, as you talk to some of these victims of domestic violence, they say that the hardest part they had is when they tried to run, they'd get in their car and the threats maybe of death or major bodily harm. They put the kids in the car, they run to the sheriff's office, they look around, see if it's safe, they run inside, then they come out, they look around, run back out, then they got to go to the state attorney's office, then they've got to go here and there to get help. The Family Justice Center in Tampa is a facility where all that is in one spot. So once you go there, you walk in the door's closed and locked, there's bulletproof glass in there, and you can get all the support you need to help these victims. The place in Tampa, the Family Justice Center in Tampa, is one of 15 nationally. Actually, it was President Bush's efforts on domestic violence, and they were pilot programs in 15 different states. And we in Tampa are fortunate to have the only one in Florida.
Which President Bush? When we say President Bush,
the current President Bush.
George W.
This is George W. This was his efforts to try to curb domestic violence, which not many people knew that he even had done that. And so this is a great place here in Tampa. And like I say, it's a one-stop shopping for people who are involved in this. I was over there recently. And I was looking at the demographics because I was an old math major. I've got to look at numbers. 30% of the victims have high school degrees, and 35% of the victims have college or higher.
Really?
Yes. You kind of think that it's only the very poor they get involved in this or not. It's your neighbors. Yours and my neighbors are involved in this, which is scary. It's happening no matter what your economic income, no matter what your racial profile is. It's out there, and it's bigger than any of us knew. And one of the things that I liked about the Family Justice Center is if the victim does need housing, the Spring is right there. They have an office in that building also, and the Spring of Tampa Bay then can take care of the housing for these victims and their family and the kids. So it's a great organization, and we need a lot of support. But for the victims out there that may be looking at that, or you have a one-stop shopping to go. Find a Family Justice Center. It's on the bus line, and feel free to go by there.
They could probably call. Is it under the Family Justice Center?
It should be under the Family Justice Center in the phone book. And I'd give you the address right now, but I don't remember what it is.
It's all right. They can go to the phone book and look it up.
But it's a great organization.
It's interesting that this is something that President Bush started. I go back to the lines, Mark Anthony's lines, the good or the evil lives after us, but the good is in turn with our bones. A lot of times we forget all the good things that happen. No Child Left Behind, I think, was a good initiative and something that needed to be done.
It's a building block. No Child Left Behind is a great building block. It's a start, and it needs to be built upon again to take it to the next level. In Florida, we hear a lot of stuff against the FCAT, but the FCAT has done a lot to increase the reading, math, and writing of our students. And our education levels are moving up, and our kids are doing much better than they were a few years ago. It adds that accountability issue. That's one of the things you have to have, no matter what you're doing, is the accountability issue.
You know, no matter what I feel about George Bush as being president, I'd still enjoy having him as a next-door neighbor.
You might not like all the Secret Service guys around.
Well, that's true, and he's not going to live in my neighborhood anyway. But you know, it's important that we keep a sense of humor with some of this. And sometimes, even myself, and people hear this, they say, yeah, you gets too involved and too caught up in the moment. And we don't look at the overall. And I had a tree in my yard that everybody said was going to die. And I went out and trimmed it back to where it was just a nub. There wasn't anything there. In fact, the kid that was helping me said, "Are we going to come back tomorrow and cut the rest of it down?" But in 2 years, it had come back beautifully because it had been trimmed so badly. Well, so well. I use the term well this time. And maybe that's what's going to happen with the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think the Republican Party, nationally, we've got to go back to our roots. We've got to go back to being conservatives. There are a lot of issues, as we talked about, that I'm involved in with the foster kids and domestic violence and actual sexual predators. I've done some bills, and I'm working a bill on sexual predators. Those issues crossed all boundaries of politics. They are people issues that we need to solve and take care of. And I would like to hope at our national level that we can get the Democrats and Republicans together to work those social issues that need to be worked. Those people that need the hand up, I'm not for the handout, but the hand up. We need to take care of those people and help them with that hand up. And we have to make sure those people that we give that hand up, we remind them that now it's your turn to turn around and hand your hand down to help someone else come up.
Boy, I sure agree with that.
I mean, and unfortunately that doesn't always happen. We give somebody a hand up and they move on and you never see them again.
To he who is much given, much is expected.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, I got mine became the philosophy. And you ain't getting any of it.
Yeah, and that's what we've got to change that philosophy. And the election of Barack Obama now should hopefully take some barriers away from the black community that's always said, you know, we can never do that. They've held us back.
Oh.
And so you know, it's a great thing for our country.
Prejudice is alive and well in America. There's no question about that. And there is going to be a rough road to get where you're going because everybody doesn't want to give up part of their turf. And there's a huge group that wants somebody to look down on. Yeah. But here you had a kid whose father deserted him, was raised by his grandparents, who managed to get up and go to school and get his education and everything, rose to be president of the United States. So I think Lewis or one of them was talking about the fact that he had always been telling children they could do anything they wanted. And he said, but in the back of his mind, there was always a question, is that really true? And now the answer is with a resounding yes. America has spoken.
No, I agree 100%. We have spoken, the people have spoken, and hopefully those barriers are now go away. And some of those barriers may only be perceived barriers. There may not have been a barrier there, but if you believe that you can't go move up, then you can't move up.
Whatever you believe.
If you believe you can be the king, then you can be the king. If you believe you can be the president, if you work hard enough and do what things you want to do, you can succeed. And so a lot of it, some of it, not a lot of it, some of it is just a perception. And some of it is barriers that hopefully now will be taken away. Henry
Ford made the statement, he said, if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're probably right.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I think we can.
I do.
I've heard that somewhere, we can.
Yes, we can. I think that was
but I think that's a slogan we all ought to pick up on. The Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and the neocons seized the Republican Party. I'd like to see us go back to being a true conservative party that believes in the rights of everybody.
I agree with you, and I think we are statewide. I think that's where we are.
Yeah, you know,
and that's the thing. It bothers what's the word I'm looking for? Boggles the mind. That at the state level we can be doing that. You look at the election in the state. The Senate stayed the same. We lost that one seat that was really a Democratic seat anyway, so we basically stayed the same. So the people are saying, we like what you're doing, in the state, but you guys in Washington, you need to change.
Well, look what Adam Putnam just came out with. He's giving up that leadership post, and his comment was, I'm tired of twisting, excuse me if I'm wrong on this exactly, but it was to the effect that, you know, I want to be able to vote the way I think it should be done. And he did on the bailout, and by God, that bailout was necessary. We're going to have to do something in order to get this country rolling again. And those that had the courage to get up and support it from the beginning without having to have another, I don't know how many, $50 billion worth of add-ons added to it.
$150 million of bribes, basically.
Bribes, yeah.
I mean, that's when you say, I need your vote and here's a turkey for your home district, those are basically bribes. And I would hope that we would get away from that. You know, even at the state level, we have our member projects that we bring home, and I've always said we shouldn't have any, but by God, if we have one, I'm going to work hard to make sure that's mine.
Right, and that's what we send you up there for, is to bring the bacon home to our district.
And so, and hopefully they're good projects, and we've brought some back. Nationally, it needs to be the same way. If you're going to have, but they need to tone it down. The transportation bill that passed 4 or 5 years ago was a horrible bill. So many earmarks in there. That's the one that had the bridge to nowhere.
Right.
There was so many earmarks in there. I'd been involved in that and watching the progress, and I was hoping that the president would have vetoed it and said, look, you guys, you're becoming spenders. Get back to your roots. And I think that could have been a change that we wouldn't have seen what would happen this past week, that the Republicans would have stayed with their fiscal conservative roots in Washington and gone back to where they needed to be. But they just became spenders. They really did.
And chargers.
Spenders in charge, yeah. My brothers...
They didn't pay for it, they just spent it.
My brother's a big liberal from Massachusetts, so you can imagine emails that go back and forth between our houses. And he says, he said, you tell me that the Democrats are tax and spenders. He said, you Republicans are no tax and spenders and chargers. And he's right.
We're running out of time.
Oh, thank you, Bill. I enjoyed it.
Representative from District 62, you're welcome on this program anytime you want to come back. Maybe we'll do a whole program on your violence project.
I'd love to do that. Come back and bring Nikki back and let her explain to you what's going on.
That'd be great.
I'd love to do it. It's great to be here, Bill.
I'm Bill Hodges. This is Spotlight on Tampa Bay. We've had Representative Rich Glorioso from District 62 in the Florida Legislature with us. You're special, you're unique, you're good. Come back. We'll see you again. Thank you, Rich.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.